Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Very pleased to have with us a special guest from the Pelican Institute, one of our partner organizations. They're a premier think tank here in the state of Louisiana. And the Capitol Bureau reporter is here with us in the ring. Fergus Hodgson is with us, and he's got some incredible information that I wanted to share with you. And Fergus, how you doing? Welcome.
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me on, Jeff. It's a pleasure.
You know, it really attracted my attention when I received this piece that you had put together the other day saying that Louisiana, our state, folks, is the most overgoverned state in the South. And explain to our viewers what that means.
There's a new ranking of the states for freedom that takes into account 150 policy variables, and the outcome is that Louisiana is 35th in the nation and the least free in the South. So yeah, behind all the former Confederate states.
So we're in league with like New York and California and those kind of states. I mean, we're talking about the real liberal states out there with heavy taxes and lots of government.
Right. There seem to be, well, New York is out ahead of everyone in terms of being the least free or most overgoverned, but Louisiana is not so far behind. They have. In the intervening period between the previous, from this study to the previous one, Louisiana has improved for places. So actually, like, the trend is in the right direction.
Now, but bottom line is we got a long way to go, and we want to be certainly competing with our neighbors. And my view is, I want to get yours, that there's a correlation between being overgoverned and being less free and problems that we have with our economy. And I'm looking here at some of these states that are doing well. You know, I see Texas is way ahead of us, and Florida, and you know, these are states that don't have an income tax and seem to maybe do a better job of attracting business. Is there a correlation there?
Well, the study explicitly states that people are traveling to freer states, and the correlation is actually very strong. So it's 99% statistical confidence, and also if we apply the rate of change based on these freedom rankings, if Louisiana were to be in the top 20 states, that would halve our outmigration, and if we were to actually get into the top 5 or be one of the leaders, that would eliminate the net outmigration. Currently, well, over the last 10 years, Louisiana has basically had a stagnant population. Only Michigan has actually lost population in the entire country, but across the South, the average has been a 15% increase, so we are way behind the other states.
And you know, we've felt the effects here because we've lost 2 congressional seats in the past 20 years.
Yes.
We've lost a quarter of our delegation. We've lost influence up on Capitol Hill. We've had to redistrict and have all those battles in the legislature. If we were possibly in the other end of this spectrum and getting some of this government out of the way, maybe we could be talking about some new congressional seats, and that's a much easier kind of redistricting session when you have more seats to deal with. Now, Fergus, let's talk to our viewers about some of the reasons why we have such a poor ranking.
Yeah, well, we have a high sales tax, we have a heavily regulated private schooling sector, high rate of government employment, a high rate of government spending, and it has been expanding at least up until 2009. There's also burdensome prosecution of drug offences. I mean, we talked about, you mentioned this, the guy who's got life imprisonment for a marijuana case. I mean, so there are lots of variables they bring up. There are, I think, 2 positives they did mention: that Louisiana is relatively free in terms of gun ownership, and
homeschooling, right?
So homeschooling. So private schooling is another matter, but homeschooling itself, that particular industry is free.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people do enjoy homeschooling here, so that is good that they at least are able to do that without too much government interference. But they also talked about, you know, a liability system among the worst in the country.
Right. They actually point out partisan elections as a problem. I'm not an expert on court matters, but yes, that Louisiana has one of the, if not the worst, systems of legal liability in the state, in the U.S.
So a lot of these things, don't you think, Fergus, could be maybe addressed by our Louisiana legislature?
Yes, and actually, important to note that a lot of these things don't cost any money. You know, if you want to loosen up regulations on private schools, that doesn't cost you anything, and so we should keep that in mind. Yes, there is a budget challenge going on, being debated right now, but many of these issues are just simple ones. I mean, why do we ban, online gambling, for example, and then have to go out and enforce those kind of rules? Certainly, yeah, we could loosen these things up and turn the trend without burdening ourselves at all.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised that we do. We have pretty much every other form of gambling known to man here.
Right.
So the Mercatus Center at George Mason is one that conducted this, and
Correct.
They've got a reputation for doing these types of studies, right?
Yes, they are a very well-respected institute at George Mason University, and they are completely nonpartisan, purely research. And yeah, this is the second time they've done this this ranking, and it is the probably it's the most sophisticated ranking that I know of. It's different from other rankings across the states in that it includes personal freedom issues such as the right to bear arms and to homeschool, unlike others which are purely what's the level of taxation, what's the level of spending.
So you have economic freedom, you have personal freedom, and in their ranking they put both of those together, right?
So they have three underlying categories: fiscal, government spending and taxation; regulatory, things like how many insurance mandates are there, what is the freedom of labor movement; and then personal freedom, which, again, drug laws.
Right. Yeah. So when you look at the states that are the, quote, most free, number one is New Hampshire, and their motto is live free or die, right?
Yeah, they're living up to their motto. Yeah,
they really are. Followed by South Dakota, Indiana, Idaho, and Missouri. Now, most of those states are what you would consider, I guess, conservative, red states. And that's why it's sort of odd. Louisiana is a more conservative state, yet they're near the ranking of the blue states down at the bottom.
Well, they are, well, yeah, we could say they're fiscally conservative, but not necessarily socially conservative. And they are conservative in a way, but again, they're not necessarily tied to the Republican Party.
Right.
So, yeah, both New Hampshire and Indiana have switched their presidential support in the previous elections. But on the other end of the spectrum, in terms of the cellar dwellers, they're all Democratic strongholds.
Right. And the bluest of the blue, and of course New York. New York is a great example of that. In our final 30 seconds, what would you like to see, what would be the easiest maybe first step that we could take to maybe improve this ranking?
Just loosen up the private schooling education. We already have problems paying for the education system. If more people can easily go into private schools, that would both increase our freedom and save us money at the same time. So that seems to be the simplest one. The other ones they recommend, such as a cap on government employment and a reduction in the sales tax, are probably more difficult.
Right.
But presumably they're smart strategies as well.
A lot of goals to achieve, and certainly that gives us a lot to work with. Fergus, thanks for joining us and updating us. Appreciate the work. And of course, we appreciate what the Pelican Institute is doing. All right, folks, coming up next is the final round. It's my commentary of the week, next right here on Ringside.